Hey guys, welcome to the Hero Phase podcast. I'm Mick Wendell, your host, and I'm here with Dave Chin
How's things going?
and a special guest, Andy Farrell.
Well, hello there.
Super special.
So special.
And today we're just going to have a talk about kind of what we've been doing hobby-wise in the past while. A tournament we ran at the weekend, just a little one-dayer. And we're going to touch a little bit on Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven, not too much, just kind of like have a little natter about them and kind of what's going on at the moment in the scene. So we'll start off. And you guys want to kick off with what you've been doing hobby-wise over the past few weeks?
I'll kick off, I suppose. I've been, unsurprisingly, working on an awful lot of Flesh Eaters.
Wonder why.
I wonder why, yeah. What could possibly have prompted that? Just I was in a weird place when the book dropped in that the vast majority of stuff I already had. So all I needed to paint for the tournament, which was going to be their first run, was one of the End of Spells and the character model.
What End of Spells did you take, actually?
I took the Chalice. So
did it pay off?
It's a tough one to say. I haven't quite figured out where I want to go with the Flesh Eaters from yet, based on the 3 games I had, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I only got the Chalice off in 1 game, and it was useful in that game, but it's, you know yourself, it takes a while to test something out and see if it's going to pay off. I think it is a fairly good utility piece. Sorry, I should clarify what the Chalice does. For every model that's killed within 12 inches of it, you add a marker to the Chalice. And then at the end of the phase, you roll a dice, and on a 4-up, you can heal a wound to a Flesh Eater Court model within 12 inches, or resurrect a ghoul to a ghoul unit within 12 inches.
For each marker that's on the Chalice?
Exactly, yeah. So if you're, like, say you've sent your Terrorgeister, your zombie dragon in, and it started battering a load of, like, small little dudes, you can potentially be getting 10, 20 wounds back on one of your big beasties, or restoring one of your smaller units back to full health. So for 40 points, I think it's a solid choice, and I'm going to keep playing around with it. But there are the other 2 End of Spells that I want to paint up and try out in the games just to see what they do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That Chalice sounds amazing. Probably have a little more of a chat about that when we talk about Flesh Eaters.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really been my kind of hobby, and the other side of things then is, now that Golden Demon has been announced, I actually have concrete dates. I've had to start knuckling down and picking categories for stuff I'm going to do, and starting to assemble all the different all the entries and stuff. So that's kind of been the progress. A lot of gearing up to do hobby and sort of the intermediary stages, as opposed to actually putting brush to model. But hopefully that'll start happening now in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Might come back to you and ask and pick your brain a little bit about what your process is for Golden Demon in this show. So
yeah, cool.
Might do a little of that. And Andy, I understand you have just finished an army.
I have indeed. I got super inspired by the new Gloomspite Gitz book that came out. Night Goblins was actually the last army I was doing for old 8th edition fantasy. I had started that project with the mad intention of having a 2,000 point army with 23 war machines in it. But the book changed kind of just before, or the game changed just before I got the chance to actually get stuck into it. So I was left with a big pile of goblins. Yeah. So when the new book got done, I got super inspired and kind of went back to them in a big way. And in the last 5-6 weeks, I've painted a full 2,000 point brand new army. Yeah. So pretty pleased with that.
That's awesome. As we said, a really nice looking 2,000 point army as well. It's not a case of just, a quick dry brush, shade, done. Like there's actual, effort.
Yeah, effort put in. Yeah. It's actually a funny one. I actually feel that myself. That I feel like it's the nicest army I've ever churned out to date so far. So I was quite pleased to take it out and actually play some games that are. It's actually driven me to play more games. Like I played, I think, 5 or 6 Age of Sigmar games in the last 3 weeks, which is crazy for me. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's more than you've played in the past, I'd say 3 years, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Trying to boil up bounder all over people.
Yeah. Well, anyone listening to this who plays in tournaments and who builds a list for a tournament and they don't have to paint the models will all relate to the painting vigorously right up into the deadline. But in fairness to you, you did churn out quite a high standard army for the tournament. It wasn't just the bare minimum. It was actually a fairly decent, like it was a good stand. Like it was really nice. It wasn't like an army I looked at and go, yeah, you just about got that done, you know.
Yeah.
So fair play to you. You are good at persevering. Through that, I can't. Like, you should see the state of my Stormcast. They're fucking awful looking.
They really are, Mick.
To be honest, my Stormcast is the same. I find it very difficult to, like, every time I go back to them, I seem to be able to paint one unit.
Yeah.
And then my eyes go cross-eyed looking at gold, and I'm just like, I gotta go paint something else.
So there's a question for you, completely tangentially and already derailing the episode, but
standard.
Something I found with, say, you get a new edition and you get the new army that goes with it. It always seems to be the army that people will kind of pick up, start doing, but then have difficulty trying to sort of tie down how they want to do that army. So,
yeah.
Like, I think, would you agree, like, you have, say, 9 out of 10 people who start a Stormcast army get to a certain point of it, but it never kind of gets past that sort of stage of the line? And maybe you could say the same if you're taking, I don't know, the 40k analogy of, like, a Death Guard army or a Primaris army that people have started.
I mean, I guess for my opinion on that would be that starting a Stormcast army is the easiest way to get into playing Age of Sigmar. So like I said, loads of people will start it, which means that most people have a small collection of Stormcast. But then naturally your mind wanders. I mean, people just seeing all the other models and they get a little bit more comfortable with, you know, how to build an army, how to paint an army, and how to structure an army, which means they can look at Iden, a Deepkin, or Flesh Eater Course, or Skaven, and kind of understand how to start that. Yep. And then they'll jump the gun and go to something that is more aesthetically pleasing for them. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of, you know,
and then there's another
unloved Space Marine, Ghost, Stormcast, and Death Guard armies out there.
And then you've got the other side of things where you have, like, you see this, and this is, look, if you look at trading websites and all that, and trading Facebook pages, you notice people getting, like, you'll see now people selling Gloomspike Kit armies, and it'll be like built Loon Shrine, Loon King, some goblins, half painted squigs, and you'd be like, this is a really weird lot. It looks like someone just started the army with, like, on an impulse, and then got halfway through it, played a few games with it while they were painting it, didn't like them, and then just stopped painting them and then decided to sell them. I see a lot of that.
Yeah, I saw the weirdest version of that happen the other day, and it was actually with a 40k army. I saw a post go up online with a guy being like, I just ordered an entire 2,000 point Genestealer cult army. It hasn't even arrived yet, but I've watched some battle reports and I don't like how they play, and I'm selling them. Like, they hadn't even arrived to him yet, and he was already trying to shift them on because he'd watched a couple of reports and be like, nah, they're not for me. I'm like, what?
I don't understand that now. I never understand that people who start an army literally like that, and literally within weeks or within a month or so decide they want to sell it to buy another one.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. Like, I've only ever sold one army, and that's because it was sitting in my house for about 2 years. And I never touched it. It was an old 40k orc army, and it wasn't me at all. I didn't want to paint it. I didn't want to play it, but I'd had it for a while. Do you know what I mean? I'd had it for a few years, but I just don't understand people starting the army and then getting rid of it almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know me, I'm an absolute hoarder. So I'm left with, I'll have 50,000 miniatures unpainted by the time I retire, and I'll be dead, and there'll still be 50,000 models left. But there is those other people who are like college students, and they live in student accommodation, and, you know, they are tight for space, and they're like, they kind of just keep shuffling to the next army. It's not something that I do. Kind of understand it a little bit. Like, some people don't have any, like, sentimental attachment to things. They only see it as, like, having a monetary value. And if it doesn't serve the purpose anymore, they're like, well, I can get a bit of cash for this and start the other one.
Yeah, it's also they buy it to play test it, and if it doesn't play the way they want it to play, they get rid of it.
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it too. I mean, whereas us, we'll build an army and paint it, and we'll play a couple of games, and we'll decide, that unit doesn't work, I'm going to swap it out for that. Some people will immediately sell that unit that doesn't work for them instead of keeping it in their collection. So
yeah, I have an element of a collector, and like, I'm not a complete collector, but for example, with Warhammer, I like to have units, even though I'm not going to use them. Like, for example, I bought everything in Deepkin. That's what I've been working on now for the past while. is my Deepkin as well as my ogres.
Yeah.
But at the start of the year, Deepkin were my new army. Over Christmas, I got pretty much every unit that exists for them.
Yeah.
And like I built a list and then got all the extra units because I wanted to have everything, because I want to be able to have choice. That's my thing. I like to have enough choice that I can build any list I want within the book. And then if I still need like multiple of a unit that I haven't bought, then I'll go buy it. That's fine. And if I don't use it, fair enough. But like, I still feel like I have something of worth, even if I'm not going to play games with it all the time.
And I think there's definitely a thing about like, that's a lot easier to do currently, I feel, especially when you do something like Flesh Eater Courts, or like I did Deepkin, where they have a big, beautiful range, but it's not a big stretch. Like if you do something like, I'm going to do Beastmen, or what are the Beast of Chaos, you can't honestly go out and buy every single unit for that army, because
I can't.
You'd buy like 12,000 characters, and like I've done it before. Like even my Night Goblins or my Gloomspike kits I'm doing now, I bought everything, so I've still got another unit or a unit of trolls to paint. There's no trolls in my army. I don't really plan on running trolls, but I bought them because they're beautiful. I had the Goblin sitting there. I'm never going to run that, but I might use one or two of them as like wizards later on. But I'll get that painted up as well. Then I've got like a million old characters from the old army. I'm like, oh, the effort of painting all those characters.
They're beautiful models, some of them.
Yeah, they are.
This is the test, Mick, right? Did you buy Lotan?
No, I did not.
Okay, well then you failed the test.
Yeah. Lotan is, at the moment, arguably one of the worst characters in Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
His only redeeming feature is that he's got an octopus with a shiv.
Squid Bro.
It's an awesome model. I will actually buy it. That is something I will buy, but as it's pretty far down my list of things to buy at the moment.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm actually currently building a Gloomtide Shipwreck. Is that what they're called? Gloomtide Shipwreck, yeah. I'm actually currently building that as we speak. My second one. Today I had a little bit of inspiration and I built a list when I was in work, and it's using the Marty Corps and the Royal Council. The Royal Council is the one with the Kellyan King, Scryer, and the Tidecaster.
Gives you the extra movement for your eels, is it?
Yeah, I can use a command. I can use a command point to increase the movement characteristic up to 3 units by 3 inches, and I can stack it as well. So I start the game with 3 command points, so I can give a unit of eels plus 3 movement or plus 9 movement if I wanted.
You give 3 units plus 9 movement.
Yeah, 3 units, but the eels and thralls basically. So, and then I've got the Namarti Corpse with 20 thralls, 10 thralls, and 2 units of 10 reavers with a soul render. And I'm gonna start off using the Morphan.
Yeah.
Enclave.
And that's the one that gives you the extra regen on the corpse, isn't it?
Yeah, basically the Soul Squire. With Namarti Corpse and Morphan, gets base 6 when he uses his Lurelight ability, I think it's called. He gets 6 thralls or reavers back. Now, reavers are still only 1 moon models with a 5-up save, or thralls are. So they don't. I can't imagine them surviving for very long.
Yeah.
But the 20, I'm hoping I can, if I pick my fights well, I can put them in. I might lose like 7 or 8 guys, spend a command point to not have to take battle shock, and then I bring 6 guys back with the.
Well, you've also got the. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't one of the flood tides mean that all your units are in cover?
Yeah, in the first battle round, I get +1 to my save.
So you're a 4-up save at that point.
Yeah, 4-up save in the first battle round. The second battle round, I think I can run in charge.
Cool.
And the third battle round, all my stuff gets to fight first.
Yeah.
I've purposely stayed away from the Tidecaster being the general and flipping the tide. I originally had just the standard eel spam list just ready to go. In fact, like when I wrote it, it was just like, this is just the same as every other one that exists. And I didn't have any of the models I wanted to play with, and that kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
So I went back to the Namarti Corps with the Royal Council has at least Volturnos, 50 infantry dudes, and only 1 unit of 9 eels. So it's actually, I don't know if the list is very good, but I kind of like the look of it, so I'm going to see what it does, and I mess around with it. So I've got another list with the Kellyan Corpse which uses a turtle and a shark as well.
Oh yes, I vote for that one.
Yeah, like the turtle, I definitely think the turtle can be played. The shark is literally there because I have to.
You have to play the turtle. That was a gift from me.
Yeah, so the turtle, the turtle actually is on my painting list of things to do. So that list will probably be painted first.
Awesome.
Because I want to paint like one of everything in the army first. But yeah, it's a tough one with Deepkin. They're so expensive and so elite. You can't fit like,
No,
and I
can't fit everything.
just like some armies you can, some armies you can't, and this is one that you just can't. If you want variety in this army, you just get very little of everything.
I don't even think there is an army you can. Like, can you think of an army that you get absolutely everything you want in it?
Like you can put a lot in.
Which?
Gloomspike Gits, you can put. I think you can put a lot in.
Yeah.
Even you can put a lot in. Flesh Eater Quits, you can get everything because they only got like 4 kits.
No, you can't. I would take issue with that. You can't get everything you want in Flesh Eater Quartz.
They are quite expensive. But that was just the fact that they only have like 4 kits.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we got 5 kits now. It's fine. We got an extra kit.
Actually, my Gut Busters get quite a lot of variety in them.
Yeah, but they're not an army, Mick.
Yeah, they are an army.
You stopped playing them. You've given up your right to talk about Gutbusters. You didn't take them to the last big tournament you went to.
How many tournaments have you won with Flesh Eaters, and how many tournaments have I won with Gutbusters? Scoreboard, Dave. Scoreboard.
Yeah, Vic, that's me rolling dice. That's not a fair judge.
So yeah, no, it is one of those armies that just doesn't. It's very hard to fit everything in, and if you do fit everything in, you've got a shite list. So you just have to you do have to sacrifice. And in fairness, list building I really do enjoy. I like it. I like the challenge of list building.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind it as much. But there are some times where I just like to take everything. But that unfortunately means you're playing like 4,000 point games with Deepkin.
Yeah.
So,
I find building lists to be the most stressful part of my hobby, because like you, I'll buy what I think is a beautiful army. I'm like, this is what an army looks like. So for me, if it was Deepkin, it'd be like, 4 units of 20 of the infantry, and it'd be two of the bow guys and 2 of the thing. And then it'd be like 2 units of 6 sharks, and then it'd be like a turtle, and then it'd be 2 of the. And all of a sudden, you're like, all right, that's what I think a 2,001 army looks like. What do you mean it's 8,000? But fuck this game.
Yeah, I find I'm kind of still stuck a little bit in the 8th edition mindset, where everything was just you piled in as much stuff as you could. And if you flip that on its head now, if we were to still be in, say, an 8th edition sort of scenario, or even old school 40k scenario, the list that Andy would have written out there would have been maybe 1,500 points, and he'd be like, shit, what the fuck else do I put in this army now? Just fill it with magic items and stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the old fantasy was absolutely ridiculous. They just ended up fitting so much into it. We thought it was great.
War machines.
Yeah, we thought it was great because of our we were getting more stuff in our armies, but what we didn't realize, it was just like everyone was getting that, so the armies were just getting massive.
Yeah.
And fully enough, that's the thing that actually playing games of Age of Sigmar has changed my tune a little bit. Because like when I used to write Age of Sigmar lists before I played enough, I'd be like, it wasn't that I didn't get enough toys. It was more a case that I'm like, oh, how can I beat anyone with such a small army? Everyone else is going to have big armies. Because in my head, they had like 8th edition fantasy armies.
Yeah.
I had this. And now that I've gone to like play a bunch of games, I'm like, oh wait, no, people have the same size armies as me. I can play. Oh, this makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's I sometimes have the same feeling. I'm looking at my Deepkin army, and I've got 50 infantry in the form of Thralls and Reavers, and I've got 1 unit of 9 eels, and all I'm thinking about is like, this is going to get wrecked.
Yeah.
How is this going to do well? So, and it is something I kind of battle, because I'm very indecisive when it comes to lists, and I'm almost better just kind of making an absolute like impulsive decision to take something and just rolling with it, because I just have a bit of crack with it. But I do find like sometimes in list building I get very indecisive, because I just have to, everything has to be perfect. But it's a game.
Can be, like.
It's a game with a lot of fluidity. You could be good against one army, shit against another. Good against one player, shit against another player. There's so many different factors. So
it's a game with dice. There's always going to be an element of luck and randomness to it. But actually, jumping on what you were saying there, Andy, about sort of your mindset changing based on now having played a few more games of Age of Sigmar. Yep. That's probably a good way to actually segue into talking about the tournament we were asked around. All 3 of us were at it. Mick, obviously you were running the tournament.
I was the tournament master.
Yeah.
So
corner and built ogres for most of the time.
Oh no, well I tried to build an Iron Blaster, but I got really distracted by like, players coming to me and being like, hey, I've got this rules query.
Halfway through the day, me and Nathan wanted to walk. Well, it was my idea, but we decided not to do it. Was to just cut one piece out of your Iron Blaster kit and just put it in our pocket and walk off, and you get really frustrated downstairs, wondering where that part was.
That would have been
to do it though.
That would have been
fantastic.
So sad for me.
Just like a wheel or something.
I still haven't finished building that Iron Blaster. I went into workshop the other day to try and finish building it, and I just like got sidetracked by talking to everyone. I think my body's just telling me Iron Blasters are shit and not to use them, but I really want to. My head says no, my heart says yes.
I love those models, so I'm with your heart. I have my Fluffy, and I always will. She's a beast. I love her.
Yeah.
There. Fucking Rhinox.
Yeah, so I'm dying to play them just for the crack, but like I would like to make them work.
Yeah.
Because they're a cool ranged unit, and to be honest, a lot of the times Gutbusters can't go toe to toe with a lot of units.
Yeah.
Because they just can't take the hit back, or like if I charge 2 units in, one of them get an attack first.
Yeah.
So I need to like whittle things down, get them below that 20 mark for their buffs.
Yeah.
Pick off monsters wounds so that they're not as strong when I fight them, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like they hit on 4s. If the unit's big enough, I get to reroll my hits, but they hit on 4s with one attack that does d6 damage. Like it's just, and they're only 120 points, not the worst in that sense. But
I take like direct anger against like attacks that have one attack and it hits on 4s.
Yeah.
It always misses. I don't give a fuck what the statistics are. It always misses.
Exactly, yeah. Like you have 5 turns in the game. That means it'll like 2 to 3 turns it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
Then you've got to also factor in that when it does hit, you've got to roll your 2+ to wound, which more than likely it'll wound. But then you've also got to factor in they've got to save. Now it's -2 rend, but they still have their armor save. Like if they have a 4 up, they've got a 6 up save. And that 1 6 up save they always make. And then you roll your d6.
The thing is, like, if you're shooting something like that's got one shot that does d6 wounds, you're generally trying to snipe a character or take some wounds off a monster. And most of those things have like an extra 4 up save or 5 up save against all wounds.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
That's what I was just gonna say there as well. Like then you have your damage roll and you roll a 1, and then if you roll a 6 and he's got a 5 up save, he like passes 4 of them.
Always.
It's just so demoralizing. Now, in saying that, there was a guy in the Gutbusters Facebook group, and he went to a tournament there a couple of weeks ago, and in one game did 30 damage with his Iron Blaster. And that guy
throw it at the guy's army, wouldn't it?
30 damage. It means he hit and wounded and did 6 damage with every single shot. Like, why can't mine do that?
Because you didn't use weighted dice. That's bullshit.
I did use weighted dice. I still rolled like 2s and stuff like that.
Fair.
I was thinking like, how could you make the Iron Blaster better? Like, I'm all for making things like, fair, but not about just like, oh, this needs to be broken. And I was trying to think of how could the Iron Blaster cannon be good, but not so far away from what it is now that it becomes like a 300 point model or something like that. And I was thinking even something like simple, like if it had on a 6 to hit, it did 6 mortal wounds.
What about if it was just like, what if it had like 2 types of ammunition? So you had, this is the one you load to shoot monsters, and this is the one you load to shoot units. So they're like ball and chain, like, they're like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that hits loads of small guys, or this hits loads of big guys, or whatever. That kind of thing would be really cool.
I don't think they do that because they have the scrap launcher, and the scrap launcher is for killing like hordes, and the Iron Blaster is meant for like heavy damage.
Yeah, you're totally right.
But it's the cannon of the Sky Titans. In the old fantasy, it was known as like one of the strongest cannons. It did like the most damage. It's a massive cannon, so I feel like that should be portrayed in this edition. And right now, the fact that it only does 1d6 damage is kind of like, well, that's kind of shit. Like a ballista does more damage than that, because it gets like 4 shots at rapid firing, and each hit is a d6 hits.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking like you could have a case of like on a 6 to hit, it's 6 mortal wounds, or just have it as a flat like 5 or 6 damage. Like I know that sounds outrageous, but again, it's only hitting on 4s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one shot hitting on 4s.
Yeah,
make the reward worth it. Make it a fucking like you hit on 4s, you wound, you get past their armor save, and then you finally roll that damage and you get a 1 or a 2, and you're like, what is the fucking point?
Yeah.
So
if this
make
thing is
make the world worth it at least.
yeah, like if this thing's meant to be used for targeting, so say if you take the scrap launcher and that becomes your dedicated horde thing. So then if the cannon is going to be where you be using to take out like monsters and characters, maybe you get to re-roll your hits against heroes and monsters rather than against certain big units. And if the damage roll is against, say if the target is a monster or a hero, then it does 2d6 damage instead of d6 damage.
Yeah,
Something like that.
anything, even like 2d6, pick the highest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Although, having said all of this, ogres will get a battle tome in like 3 weeks, and it'll change all the rules of all the units, and they'll be amazing or something like.
one can only hope.
That was some segue though. I was just talking about stealing a part of your model, and now we've been talking about that model for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, this isn't actually a podcast called Hero Phase. It's actually called Ghostbusters.
Yes, I'm aware of this. Yeah.
So,
most of the little stories about what the episodes have been, Mick talks about ogres, and everyone else in the room nods.
Which
Well, like,
translates really well to an audio format.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important everyone knows about Ghostbusters. It's just very important.
Yeah.
So, Andy, as something that I want to bring up. So, this was your first tournament in Age of Sigmar ever.
Yes.
And it's been your first kind of fantasy tournament since probably about 7 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I played a lot in 7th Ed. I didn't play too many in 8th edition, and I didn't play any in Age of Sigmar so far. So this is my first one.
Yeah. So, as someone like completely fresh to the scene, how did the tournament at the weekend meet your kind of expectations of what it was of what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's taken in a bunch of different ways. I mean, if we just go by my expectations, so my expectations would have generally been still compared to what a fantasy tournament was like in 7th or 8th edition, and generally it was you go to a tournament which was actually attached to a 40k tournament. So you'd go to a convention where there'd be like 100-person 40k tournament and a 8-person Age of Sigmar tournament or Warhammer tournament in the corner with the same sad 8 guys that were playing in every bloody tournament. Usually got the runt of the scenery. And yeah, it was just it wasn't great. I still went to them. I still had a bit of crack and stuff, but basically
WarpCon and Leprechaun and BroCon and all that.
WarpCon and all them. We've been to them all. And yeah, it was the same experience over and over again. And it just kind of got a bit dinky and a bit, like there's only one more time I can look at foam cut into what they thought looked like a hill. Yeah. And yeah, so I suppose from that side of it, I was quite surprised by the fact that we went to this really nice venue. I'd never been to the War Room, but people talk about it a lot around me because obviously you guys go to the tournaments all the time. So I didn't quite know what to expect. But I didn't even know it was 22 people until like the day. I was like, 22 people, that's really good. It's a lot more than I think I've ever been to a Warhammer tournament. So the numbers were great. And then I walked in, and I was, even from the outside, it looks like this old farmhouse style building. So I was kind of like, this looks kind of dinky. But then you go in, and there's 10, 12 beautiful tables, and each one's got a custom mat, and every one of them's got their own scenery. And I'm just kind of like, oh, this is really gnarly. Like, I really hope I get to play on that table. And, oh, I'd really like to play on that table. And you never had that when you went to a Warhammer tournament. You were just kind of like, I'll just make do whatever table they give me. They all look the same. They're all just a green mat with some crap scenery on it. These were all individual. Like, that's a snow table, and that's like a kind of marshy table, and that's a big elf table with big towers. And well, this is awesome.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the guys who goes there regularly. I don't know his name, unfortunately, but he actually made all that scenery himself and provided it himself. So that's all like just sitting there is kind of like Morgan's minding it from, and he's letting everyone use it, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
So we're really lucky to have it because, to be honest, like scenery is not like it's not easy to come by. Yeah. And as you rightfully said, there's only so many times you can look at squares of foam that counts as hills. Yeah. And it is nice to have proper scenery, like big, massive, proper mount, like cliff sides and buildings and like ruins and all, like really nice things, like, and different stuff as a variety.
Like, because I played Glimpse by Gits, most of my games went on till time, because it's quite a horde army and it takes time to do things. And it was my first tournament, so I still had a lot to learn. But one of my games ended, the middle game ended a little bit early, which means I got to walk around and actually properly take a look at everyone's stuff. And it was actually really interesting because it was like you'd go to a table and you'd go, oh my God, let's check this guy's army out. Oh, that's really cool. Awesome. Check the other guy's army out. Oh, that's really cool. Cool. Check the table out. Oh, this is really cool. Awesome.
Yeah. The whole package.
Yeah, it was basically like the whole package. So I really liked that. And then the next thing to expect was the people there. So if I compare them once again to
all cunts, aren't they?
Old War, yeah, they're pretty like like it was a chore. I'm not gonna lie to you. No, it was a chore when I used to go to Warhammer tournaments, because they were just chorish people. They were usually 20 years older than we were when we went, and they just had the same tired old collections of miniatures they've been playing for the last 10 editions, and they used to complain that
it does seem like it's funny you say that, because I've noticed in Age of Sigmar, and I've noticed it even compared to 40k. Age of Sigmar seems to have more of a hobby-centric following.
Yes.
Than Warhammer Fantasy ever did.
Yeah.
And that 40k does. Now, in saying that, when I did play, I played a lot of the UK tournaments in Fantasy, and I did see some incredible armies in the UK. Like, I did see some people who are just incredible, and they've transferred over to Age of Sigmar and are doing equally incredible stuff now.
Yeah.
But in Ireland, you rarely saw nicely painted armies. We were a very small community. As you said, we had like 8, 10, 12-man tournaments.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've had like 20-man tournaments in our, like, we used to have, years ago there was a big tournament which was maybe 20 or 30 people, but it's been a while since that happened.
Yeah.
But there was very few people in our scene that kind of like delved into the hobby in a big way.
Yeah.
And so when you went to a game, you'd look at it and it was a really half-assed effort at an army, and you'd be like, you really don't give a shit about the models. All you care about, you pushing coke lids around the table, as long as you said, okay, so that one's my champion, that one's the lord, this one's the wizard, and it's like, and that's what I really like about Age of Sigmar at the moment. It's in a really good spot in terms of the hobby as well. People actually give a shit about their army. They care about putting the stuff on the table. And I suppose it helps that I think right now we are in an era of some of the best models ever produced, ever.
Yeah.
Like, and it's only getting better. So we're really lucky right now as well that we do have incredible kits.
Yeah,
like,
I agree with that. I think,
kind
of jumping on that, like, I suppose one of the reasons I'd see that is looking at, if you take Age of Sigmar compared to old Fantasy, and to a certain extent, again, comparing it to 40k, Age of Sigmar is still a game that's very much in its infancy, both in terms of the actual game and in terms of the background and the lore.
4 years old?
3 years old.
Yeah, 3 years old. So if you compare that to the massive backlog of lore and history and everything that went into old Fantasy, which was fantastic, there wasn't as much room for you to sort of go in and put your own personal stamp on an army and define it how you wanted to define it.
Yeah.
Like, we all had the archetypical idea of, this is a Lizardman army.
Yeah.
This is a High Elf army. This is a Beastman army. Whereas now, I think one of the strengths of Age of Sigmar is both that any army is essentially viable, and you can make multiple builds within that army. And then on top of that, there are so many different ways of interpreting that army, whether from the background or from what kind of realm they're based in, or if there's like a particular story that you kind of want to craft with that army. And from sort of a hobbyist point of view, that's what really appeals to me about Age of Sigmar, more so over sort of 40k or over old Warhammer Fantasy, is I can go in and I can put something really unique and really personal on an army, my own kind of stamp on it. And I'm thinking that might be, maybe that's part of it, that people are just kind of more, they're more invested in it, that it's not something that's just kind of stale and set in stone. It's evolving, and the fact that the actual storyline is moving forward as opposed to just being stuck at 1 minute to midnight, maybe that's another factor as well. So you're part of something that's evolving, and in some way you can almost say you're helping to shape that narrative.
Yeah. It's actually funny because I was listening to one of the the guys from actually the Games Workshop podcast, Wade Price and the other guy was doing an interview, and that's what they were saying about old Warhammer. Like the amount of background they had, like it was a fantastic setting for telling you what had happened, but it was an absolutely rubbish system for telling you what's happening now.
Yeah.
So what are Lisbon doing now? What are High Elves doing now? We all know about the Sundering and how Malek gets betrayed, blah and blah blah. But what is he doing now? And they never told you that. They never once said, "Oh, he's actually marching on an empire right now. This is what the outcome could be." It was like that never happened.
Yeah. We were basically reading history books.
Yeah, exactly. And now it feels like Age of Sigmar. You're like reading wartime reports. You're like, oh shit, what are the Skaven doing now? Oh my god, why is there a whole clan of Skaven that jumped down a knothole and have disappeared? I wonder where they're going to show up in the lore in 2 weeks' time. It's awesome. Love it.
Yeah, no, it is good. And like I think the lore plays into a lot of it as well. Like, and I think Dave mentioned there about the realms. The Malign Sorcery has just been a fantastic addition to the game. We were only talking about it the other day, and I was even listening to Rob and Honest Wargamer talk about like using loads of endless spells, and then I've been in the tournament packs I've been making, I've been adding in all the spells from the realms, toying around with different realmscapes, with no realmscapes, and it's amazing because it just adds an extra like dimension to the game.
Yeah,
and it is, and from a hobby point of view, people are, as you said, theming their armies from a particular realm. So you could have a Deepkin army. All of a sudden, you have a Deepkin army from the realm of Hish. So you might add in some really like righteous kind of like poses into models to make them look like they're fighting for good. Or you could make it from the realm of Shish. Shish. How do you play Shish or Shish?
Shish.
Yeah, Shish sounds like
a shish kebab.
Sheesh.
But like you can really model them or paint them or whatever you want, like tailor them to the realm, and it's that extra dynamic to the army, and I really like that. Even though as I'm more like I'm about 80% gamer, kind of 20% hobbyist, I still like that aspect of that those options are there.
Yeah.
I'm kind of gutted because I really want to make actually ogres, but my whole ogre army is based around snow theme. So I don't know how I'm going to change that.
It's not snow, it's ash.
Yeah, it could be ash. Could dry brush it grey or some of that. But yeah, no, it's just a really cool idea. And I'm going to try and do an army based on. I haven't done an army based on a realm yet. I haven't kind of like I haven't had the courage to do it yet.
I'm the same with you. I want to do it, but I haven't actually taken the 2-foot jump and done it yet.
Yeah, so I'll try. I've got a bit of a backlog to work through. Who knows? I might paint my Deepkin from a realm, but sure, we'll see what happens.
Realm of Fire, Lava Deepkin.
Lava Deepkin. Jay would jizz in his pants. So, let's see what else. What about the let's see. What else can we ask about the tournament?
The actual games. I haven't talked about the games.
Yeah, so I suppose, did you have any games that stood out particularly? You actually fought the Mirror, Gloomspite Mirror.
Yeah, I fought Gloomspite Gitz and Gloomspite Gitz for the first game, yeah.
And how was that? Did you learn a lot from that in terms of the fact
Yes.
that you played against another Gloomspite player who's been playing Gloomspite for a while?
Yes,
And
I learned quite a few bits and pieces. It was quite good. It was interesting, like to fight for the moon, to see who controlled the moon, and he got it. So it was kind of like, where was he going to put the moon? And I was like, why are you putting the moon there? And he was like, I always put the moon on either my right or my left. But he was like, no, well, you don't want the moon on your side early game. It doesn't really do anything for you. So you put the moon on their side the first turn. So it comes on, you can start knocking D3 mortal wounds on their general, like turn 2. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's quite clever, actually. I might do that. It'll still hit the board turn 3 where everyone starts fighting. So I'm going to get buffs all around and all that jazz. But so it was really cool. We both had like lots of similar units, but taken in different ways. So he had lots of goblins, but he had 2 units of 40, whereas I had a unit of 60. We both had Boingrot Bounders, but I had 15 and he had 10. He tried the Spore Splatter Fanatics as well, which I have been brave enough to take because they're, 100 million points for 5 6-up save, 1 wound models that can just be shot. So it's real dodge.
They're a bit squish, all right.
They're very good, but they're super squish and they can't hide in units. So that was worrying.
Yeah. Well, I suppose their power is the fact that they get to hide a unit. Like maybe when they're like right now, there's a big discussion about whether the shooting meta is going to come back thanks to the new books that have come out.
Yeah.
So maybe Spore Splat and Fanatics might be necessary to stop the Loon King from dying on turn 1.
Yeah.
So you might have to shoot the Fanatics first. Do they have any minuses to hit or anything?
Yes, I think because they do the -1 to hit for screening, but I'm not sure if that counts for themselves. I'd have to have a quick look into it again. I'm not sure, but I think they do have an extra -1 to hit. Yeah. But
so that might be their
shooting
intention.
is a funny one because even just the 6 shots that my general gets makes people nervous. 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1, 1 damage, but then you get an extra wound every turn, keeps going on. Like you basically get poisoned by it, and even that tiny thing makes people nervous. Because I always shoot at your general or turn 1 or your wizard turn 1. I'm like, get 2 wounds off, and suddenly you're taking a wound every turn. You're kind of like, oh fuck, that's really annoying.
That is annoying. Well, do you think about it? Most characters that do something relevant in the game right now are currently like any support characters are usually 5 to 6 wounds.
Yeah.
Some are even down to 4 wounds.
Yeah.
Very few. So if you're lucky with that shooting attack and you manage to get 3 wounds off on that,
in 2 turns you're dead.
He's got 2 turn clock, and then if you double turn him, he actually doesn't get to do anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's actually quite a nasty thing. Like I'd see it as one of those things that I wouldn't depend on it if I was using it.
Yeah.
But if I was playing against it, I'd have to play around it very carefully because I don't want to risk the fact that my really important character can get wrecked. And what's the range? Like 28 inches?
28 inches.
Yeah. So it's actually you can actually stop characters from coming forward.
Yeah.
In games like 3 Places of Power, Places of Arcane Power, and Duality of Death, you can stop characters from coming forward by just keeping that within 28 inches of an objective.
Yeah.
And even with the minus to hit, you're just like, well, it's still a chance. There's still a risk of you losing a character in 2 turns.
Yeah.
Or 1 turn if you get really lucky. You know what I mean? It's just the threat of it. It's like there's a few units in the game that do that. There's a threat. It's very low probability, but the fact that it can happen, your opponent almost has to play around it. They just can't. They can't risk the kind of like Asher. It won't happen to me, and then it happens to them.
Yeah.
So
it's always that kind of thing at the back of your mind, and you're always it almost starts to make your opponents second guess themselves. Like, oh, can I take the chance it won't go off? But what if it does go off? What if it doesn't go off? And when they're kind of fighting with themselves to kind of make those decisions, then you've technically already won because you don't actually have to do anything at that point.
Yeah,
they're fighting the battle for you.
And it's a funny thing because like that rule is great, but like that is a fraction of that model's potential. Like if you didn't have that 6-shot thing, you're still always going to take him. It's almost like this little cherry on the top of a model. Because like he gives you D3 command points a turn, and he gives you like 2 spells and 2 casts, and he gets to control the moon, and like he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's incredible. But he doesn't give you D3 command points.
No, he never gives me fucking.
How many turns? How many turns have you played so far?
I've played 5 games with my Gloomspike Gits, so 25 turns, and I have successfully rolled a 4+ twice.
How many did you roll for each of them?
1 and 2. So I've had 3 command points in 25 turns.
So that is suboptimal. But the one thing that Gloomspike gets at the moment is that they're never short of command points.
No.
Even I think the moon, if it's in the if it affects your general, you get 1 command point. You just get 1 for free anyway.
Yeah.
So you're getting twice as many as any other army every turn.
Yeah. I basically ignore Battle Shock.
Exactly.
All my squigs make their charges because I've got enough command points to just reroll whatever the fuck suits me whenever the fuck it suits me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then if you rolled, average for the Loon King, you'd probably get you average out getting an extra 1 a turn.
Yeah.
So on average, you generate 15 command points in a game.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where it's like I've got such fragile units that really. So like when I set out my Fanatics, I only get to make them go 3 inches out from the unit. So then, like, I'm generally not that close. So if they fuck up their charge, you're like, oh no. So having those rerolls is really important there. Same with the Point Grab Bounders. They're obviously a lot more survivable than the Fanatics, but they're really good on the charge. So having that extra reroll it's just cool. Especially like if you combine it all together, Point Grab Bounders are moving 2d6 a turn. You're kind of like, oh, that's not great. But if you have the Light of the Moon, you can run and charge. So you're running 3d6 a turn and a 2d6 reroll to charge. So like a 5d6-inch threat range, rerolling 2 of them is terrifying. Like
It's about an 18-inch range ish.
Yeah.
So
Plus comparing, like it's also then the risk is like shit. That's Boeing Grot Bounders hitting my lines. That's gonna hurt.
And what I found kind of catches people off guard is they're not crap when they get charged either. So I've fucked up a few times, and then people have smashed into them thinking they're going to wipe them out. And suddenly you're like, oh, there's 6 wounds. Yeah, that's 3 Boeing Grot Bounders down. That's 12 left. Let me just roll these 24 squigs attacks and then these 24 guys on top attacks. And you're like, are you rolling 50 dice? I'm like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Suddenly half their unit's gone, and they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, they're definitely a solid unit. And you're right, all the majority of their power is on the charge, but they can take a hit as well, in fairness. I've seen it.
Yeah, 4 of armor, and then Mystic Shield them if you're kind of being ropey with them, if they're a bit unsupported. Just throw Mystic Shield on them, just make that a little bit more survivable.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It was actually really funny playing, because obviously in the I'm doing quotation marks now, the meta, squig units, like standard standalone squig units, are supposed to be not that good. I mean, mine have performed very well so far, whether that's kind of fluke or whether that's I hit the right guys at the right time or whatever. But it was really funny seeing my opponent, who obviously felt the same. He was like, squigs aren't that great. Look at my face when I deployed a unit of 20 squigs. And he went, you've unit of... And he was like, oh, shit. And it was that worry of this unit that he suddenly hadn't considered at all.
Yeah.
And I think that unit and the Boeing Grot Bounders units have a secret power. And it's that they have all the keywords. So they've got the squig keyword and the glimpse of gifts keyword. So when the light of the moon hits them, they get buffed completely. Like,
that's strong, yeah.
Like, because I only realized it in my last game. So I've been playing 4 games wrong so far. Because I was like, I know the Boeing Grot Bounders have it because they're being ridden by Night Goblins. So they get the Night Goblin buff and they get the squig buff. But because the squig herd has a handler, he has the keyword for the goblin. So they get the reroll 1s to hit. And oh my god, it's unbelievable.
No, they don't have the... Oh, they do have the Moon Clan.
Yeah, because
they don't have Grot, is all they don't have.
Yeah, but it's guys with the keyword Moon Clan get the reroll 1 to hit.
Yes, they have everything.
That's amazing.
And one thing I have noticed is that in my 5 games so far, no one has managed to chew through 60 goblins. The lowest they've gone to is 22.
Well, that is a... And that's not surprising. You have your Loon trying to keep them immune to battle shock, which is great.
And my command points if I move forward.
Yeah, if you want to move forward, you've got like 7,000 command points. But you also have the -1 thanks to the nets, which is incredibly powerful. You just have your front rank nets, have all the nets, but it's a 2-inch range, isn't it? So you have them like 3 inches apart, so you've got a nice kind of like Venn diagrams of -1 to hit.
Yeah.
Basically I just use so I'm using the movement trays, which are 1-inch spacing between models. So basically you have a net, spear, net, spear, net, spear. So no matter where you hit the line, you're within 2 inches of a net.
Exactly. And then so it's an aura of -1 to hit against that unit. There's 60 of them. They have a 5-up save and a 4-up against shooting, I think.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
They have the same.
More durable than a Caradron Overlord's skyship.
Yeah. Well, it's the frigate. The frigate only has a 5-up save.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And same with Boeing Grot Bounders. Lash a bucket on his head and he's got a 4-up save.
Yeah.
I think that's. I'm pretty sure their armor save is down to their ignorance rather than their actual armor.
Hey, they don't just have a pot on their head. One of their arms is also armored.
Oh.
I'll have you know.
It's not about the pot on their head. It's not about the armored arm. It's about the squig between their legs. That does all the work.
Definitely.
He does a lot of the work, especially since how I'm not very good at the game, so I'm the one getting charged fucking constantly.
So out of your list, you had the Loon King, you had the Loon Boss on Mangler, you had a little Loon Boss as well, just to give the mortal wounds. 60 grots, 18 squig herd, 6 squig herd, 15 bounders, 10 fanatics. Anything else?
Just 3 endless spells that I only really use the mushroom.
Oh yeah, the mushroom. So in your list, what do you think was the best unit at the weekend?
The 60 goblins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the Mangler Squig is the most glass hammer thing in the world. He is absolutely incredible. When he hits something, it dies. But when he gets hit back, he dies.
Yeah, he just
He's got
melts.
12 wounds with a 4-up save, and I know that seems like it's kind of okay. It's not. It's just not enough because whatever you're hitting is something big. You're not going to throw your mangler boss into something crap. So you're going to be like trying to take out that big powerful unit. So if they survive,
Yeah.
you just take horrendous damage back.
Well, you had the Mangler off in your first game, didn't you?
I did. I charged my Mangler against his Mangler. And you know what gave me the edge?
What?
The Loon King shot his Mangler with his magic stick and took 4 wounds off him in turn 1.
Cool.
And he was just like, oh, so he was in like the middle bracket already.
Yeah.
So I smashed into him and just deleted him. So like, if I hadn't have shot him with my little stick, he would have survived with 2 or 3 wounds, which means he would have been back on maximum profile because he gets shitter and then he gets better.
Yeah.
So when he's got that 2 or 3 wounds left, he's back to full profile. So that means his Mangler would have smacked me back at full profile and probably would have killed me. Like, it would have been disastrous. So it's just that Loon King's little threat of, boom, take a couple of wounds and fuck.
Yeah, it is nice. It is nice for picking off those little few wounds here and there. Any little abilities of that. Like all my tyrants have pistols.
Yeah.
12-inch range pistols, and with the D3 damage each, 2 shots, D3 damage.
Yeah.
They're actually quite strong. Like, so those little things, those little utility weapons that they get, can make all the difference sometimes. Like literally taking the last wound off a dragon, whatever it is, it's you never underestimate. Some people think, what's the point? It's only like 1 damage.
Yeah.
Could make all the difference. You know what I mean? Could knock them down a profile, could knock them down a unit below 10, so that's not getting +1 bravery.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
So with going back to the 60 goblins being the thing, they're like, it's not just the 60 goblins, it's the 60 goblins with the nets for the -1 to hit, and then the loon boss giving them the only 6s to wound, it's a mortal wound, and the thing. And I've also got my 6 snufflers to give them an extra attack. So like when things hit my front lines, I'm using like the nets are what you're using to wound things. Like the spears are there, throw out a couple of extra attacks. It's quite a few extra attacks, but really it's I roll 9 net guys, and each net guy has 4 attacks when the snufflers attacks them.
Yeah, that's a lot.
They hit on 4s, re-rolling 1s with the moon, and then roll to wound with 6 of their mortal wounds and wounds. Like you just had this bucket of. Like I played a game yesterday, Tuesday night, which was yesterday night. What day is today?
Today's Wednesday.
Yeah, so Tuesday night I played against another Gloomspike's army, but it was a full troll army. And it had allied in a huge unit of 9 Famir and the Famir character. It was crazy. And basically both my flanks pretty much buckled immediately when all the trolls smashed into them.
Yeah.
And then 3 troll characters and 9 Famir hit my 60 goblins to like finish me off and finish off the game. And by the end of that turn, there was 2 Famir left and 2 of the troll bosses were dead. And the guy was just like, what the fuck? And I was like, it's just that Sparta 300 moment. And forming a shield wall and just bashing them was so cool. And that's what I feel like, because like there's a couple of armies in Age of Sigmar where you're kind of like you can lose in the first 2 turns.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true. With my goblins, I can lose in the first 2 turns, but I can still play out the last 3 turns with just that unit of 60 goblins, causing horrendous damage. And they can't like devote their entire army to come and get me because they pull themselves off objectives. I'll just hand a Gork my unit across the table and string them out in a big long line and capture 4 objectives in one. I can do that if I want to. So they're kind of like, I have to sit back and hold this objective, but I haven't got enough devoted to kill that 60 goblins. And if I do finally kill those 60 goblins, 30 of the pricks are going to walk back out of that shrine. Oh, god damn. So yeah, that's cool. I don't feel like I'm going to lose a game turn 1 or turn 2. I'll still get to play out with my 60 men.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's interesting as well, that comment that, it's not a one roll of the dice kind of thing. I'm relying on this to go off to win the game. You've got a couple of different things in that, and you're able to play for all the different turns.
Yeah, like I can still lose the game. Like if someone jumps and burns all objectives or whatever, or wipes out all my units. The game can be over, and I'm sad I've lost some tournament points. I'm not going to be up there in the rankings, but I can still enjoy another 3 vicious turns of my goblins beating the crap out of somebody.
You've won the game, but I'm going to take some.
But I'm gonna punish you for it. Yeah, I'm gonna make you look silly when I put your army inside you with some goblin nets, with Tesco bags blowing in the wind, throwing them up. So yeah.
So I suppose then.
Awful quiet. Do we have a Mick?
I think we still have a Mick, but he might be away from his mic at the moment. So
Never mind. I muted myself with my belly.
Ha! That's never happened to me, I swear.
No, I was just saying. You mentioned there. You can still lose by burning all the objectives turn one, and we did see that at Sheffield Slaughter.
Yeah.
And that is one thing. If I could make one wish about Age of Sigmar, that is the only thing I would actually like to change, is to stop turn 1 or 2 wins.
Yeah.
I was only thinking about our game Relocation Orb the other day, and I was like, if I had given the priority on turn 3 again, mathematically it would have been impossible for you to win the game. And that's just kind of shit, because it was 3 random rolls.
Yeah.
It was nothing to do with how you played, how I played, other than giving you the turn. But like the priority rolls and the Relocation Orb, it just randomly went in my favor, and as a result, it was like 9-1 or something like that. It would have been 9-1 at the end of turn 3, making it impossible to catch up. So, like, that is the one wish I'd have if I could change anything, is to stop games finishing on turns 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Because I love playing a long 5-turn game where the game still, like, turns 4 and 5 are just important as turns 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, they're just deciders, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool games. Like, I remember playing a game up the north with my Zinch. I lost 30 Zangor and a Lord of Change on turn 1 to a Cardron Overlord's Alpha Strike.
Yeah.
And it still managed to pull out a major victory from it.
Yeah.
Like, it was an incredible game. Old me would have dropped the head and been like, well, good game, see you later. Like, you've just killed my general and my 30 Zangor.
Yep.
But, Brimstones and Horrors and Skyfires managed to pull it back for me. So it was really those sort of games. I love those games that really come down to the neck and neck on turns 4 and 5, where you're really fighting for every single movement, every single inch matters, every single attack matters. Who you allocate in a tactic can change the course of the game.
Yeah.
All this sort of thing. It's just that I love that. I love that part of the game.
Well, they're the games that they're the hobby stories that we always end up telling. It's never a case of, oh yeah, grand turn. I played a guy and I turned 1, burned all his objectives and I won. Like that's never the story you want to tell. You want to tell the one that was the nail biter and it was back and forth all the way to the final dice roll, and the game came down to that last one dice roll, because they're always the games that stick in your head and always the best crack.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go on to the important part about the weekend. Actually, is the the winner, fucking Jay Kinsella, smashing it with his Corn Dragon.
Yeah, I've never seen such an interesting dynamic when, like, it was between games 2 and 3. And everyone was out in the car park, like, cooling down a bit or having a drink or chilling out. And there was a huge discussing going on where they were comparing how many points they were, because nobody wanted to have to fight Jay. They were just like, oh God, I hope, did I do that well? Oh, no.
Yeah, better go back in and amend my score. I think my opponent beat me a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. Just so, oh God. Everyone's terrified to fight the dragon.
It was funny because I think all weekend, Jay only didn't kill one single Skyfire out of all 3 games he played.
Yeah.
He munched through an entire Temple Nest Daughters of Cain army, literally barbecued Sneck.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what other game he played. I think he played against the Zinch army with the double guard. And in fairness, props to that Zinch army being like in contention for top spot for the tournament in the last round with 2 Gargants.
Yeah, he was my best army vote because he took 2 Gargants. I didn't write his name because I didn't know his name, so I just wrote 2 Gargants.
Yeah, that was Dave Neagle.
Yeah, he told me afterwards, and I told him that I'd voted for him, and he's like, you do know I have a fucking name. I don't give a fuck.
You are a Gargant man now.
You are now the Gargant man.
The Gargant man. Yeah, that was a cool list to see, just like to see perform well as well.
Yeah.
But you always see funky lists. We always seem to see funky lists at these tournaments. Like Shane Ford brought down his Cardron Overlords with 17 drill cannons.
Yeah, he did.
I was saying what would have been hilarious is if there's the real pickup and stuff in pants, so you kill a model with a giant.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you do that against the dragon?
Yeah.
Stuff Jay's entire Chaos Dragon down his pants.
I would demand he does it.
Yeah. Totally like a fucking webway portal or something. Where'd the dragon go?
Yeah, so Jay actually won by quite a margin. Like, he actually won by about 3 or 4 tournament points. Now, Paul's army wasn't painted, so it ended up being a bit more of a margin. But in terms of just raw tournament points, he actually won, fairly comfortably.
Well, that's it. I think the other game he played was Chris Archibald in his Zinch. And in that game, I think
No,
Chris...
it was Deepkin, wasn't it?
It's Deepkin, sorry, Deepkin army.
Yeah.
And Chris took the line of, essentially, I'm going to run the hell away from the dragon and not fight it. So in that scenario, he burned 5 out of the 6 objectives, essentially turn 1, forcing Jay to castle up with the dragon to try and hold out to the end, which Jay did by the end of it. But
yeah, and he made I remember we were talking about this, and I think actually Chris made a mistake in doing that. He should have burned 4 objectives and kept 1.
Yeah.
Because it would have forced Jay to go after that objective and pulled him off it. So, and Jay did the perfect thing in that scenario. He castled up, put his whole army on that one objective because it was worth 8 victory points at the end.
And I mean, if you want a model to be a castle on an objective, being like, come here and fight me, that dragon is the fucking perfect thing for it.
There is no better model, and he played that very well. And he kept it in the end, and it paid off as well.
Yeah.
I have, sorry, a slight tangent before I forget it. I have a question. It's almost like a rules or tournament organizer / question about holding objectives. So one of the things that happened in the first game, which I thought was really strange, and I didn't know if this was now like, this is how you play the game. But basically it was, I was on X number of points and my opponent was on Y number of points. And let's say he had wiped me out, so the game was over. Yeah. Or no, I had some models left on the table, but I was ahead on victory points, but we ran out of time. And he was basically like, yeah, but if we play it out, like let's say we finish this game on turn 3. If it had gone to turn 5, I'd still be sitting on this objective, so I get these extra points. He had a buzzword for like playing through or like working it out. Is that a thing?
Thought you just work it out.
Yeah, in your head, you're like, you can't get to this side of the table with the 2 turns that are left. So I would have gotten this extra point. So technically, I would have won, kind of thing.
Well, not
or
really.
Does the game stop? Like, all right, we're out of time. The game stops.
At time, yeah, it does stop. That's what
I thought. I thought it was really strange. I was really confused. Like, what?
Yeah,
I think it depends. It depends on your opponent. So there'd be some situations where if you're coming up to time, it's almost like I don't know. Like I had this at Warlords, one of my opponents, where we were getting close to time and realized, right, there's one side, we're coming up to getting enough time to each get a turn in, but essentially the game had split into 2 halves on the table. And I fairly comfortably had one side of the table in hand, and he was sending off like 1 or 2 units to try and claim some objectives back, and then one side was in contention. So we said, right, look, that side, you clearly have that side. We're not going to resolve anything there. We're just going to say, look, that's your objective for the rest of the game, and you managed to cap that out. We'll just play purely on this side, just focus in on that and see how that kind of plays out. Okay. So I think it probably depends on situation to situation. I don't think there is any kind of hard or fast rule on that.
Yeah.
So it's more kind of that, unwritten player contract that you don't go out of your way to dig out over your opponent.
Yeah, exactly. So you do have an element of, sometimes you'd be like, if for example you were aware of the fact that you kind of slow played. Not saying anyone did. I'm just saying, let's say you were aware of that fact.
Yeah.
Then you might kind of feel bad, and you might say, well, shit, if I hadn't have been such a slow player, my opponent would have got this. So I'm going to be decent, and I'm going to say, well, I'll tell you what, let's kind of work out what the next 2 turns would have been like. This is what I feasibly could have done. This is what you feasibly could have done. And then if you both determine, you definitely would have got that objective, then maybe you might come to an agreement and say, you get this points, and therefore you win the game. Because that's another kind of like another discussion, to be honest, that you could have about it, is about the times on tournaments.
Yeah.
There's obviously been a bit of talk about this, where people aren't finishing games, and it can be quite frustrating, especially if you're in a position where you're like, well, it's turn 3 now and I'm losing, but his army is gone and my army is still intact. So if I have 2 more turns, I smash him. But it's time on the round, and he's been playing really slow. So it might not be an intentional thing, but it's still shit if you're the player that needed to get to turn 5 in a game that is built for 5 rounds.
Yeah.
So sometimes an opponent will say, that would have happened, so let's go with that.
Yeah.
It's not a case of, on a 10 plus charge, and if you manage to kill all those models, you've got like a 3% chance of it. It's more of a case of this would have happened. Let's just assume that's going to happen,
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, but that is literally a player contract. That is literally a social contract you have with your opponent. If they're willing to do it, fair enough. If not, it's just kind of the luck of the draw. But it is what you're saying. It does happen.
Yeah.
It's just down to the players, and a player as well within his right to say no, I don't want to work it out. I'm happy to leave the game here as it lies.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate as it is, but you're well within your rights to do that. And if there was ever an argument, it would just end and it was escalated to a TO. It would just end at that point more often than not. Like you'd never have a TO say no, let's discuss what would happen and then we'll do that, because you can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to be objective as best you can.
Yeah,
exactly.
Makes sense. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's a bit more like, I suppose that's another difference between playing Warhammer tournaments and playing Age of Sigmar tournaments. Is Warhammer ones were like bookkeeping. There was almost like a fucking contract of law for how everything was worked out. Like what you just suggested there is a bit more of the wishy-washy, but it's a bit more like rule of cool or be sound, or
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. That's really cool.
So yeah, that was the tournament of the weekend anyway. So Jay won with his dragon.
Yeah.
Paul Ray was in second place with a Flesh Eater Court's army. It wasn't Gristlegore.
No, it was no Grand Court. It was just...
Yeah, he used a delusion instead.
Yeah.
And the reason being is he wanted to take Majestic Horror, and he basically didn't want to be tied into artifacts or command traits or something like that. So
yeah,
he had access to he had more flexibility in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
He said he could summon like about 800 or 900 points on turn 1.
Yep.
He started the game I think with 3 command points, 4 in his hero phase. He had the throne, and so that was that. I think his trick there was the fact that he could summon so much, and then his dragons did so much damage. I think in one round of combat, he rolled his attacks for the dragon and got I think 3 6s to hit.
Yeah. So 18
mortal wounds. Like, so he did really well. I would have been very curious and very interested to see the next round, Jay versus the triple Terrorgeist, because at Sheffield Slaughter, a single Ghoul King on Terrorgeist killed a Khorne Dragon in one go. Now I say one go, he fought twice, but he still killed a Khorne Dragon in one shot.
Yeah.
So like it would be interesting. It would have been interesting to see if Paul could have done that too. The Khorne Dragon that got killed by it was a Gristlegore Feck army. So whether that would have played into it, I don't know. I just would have loved to have seen another round. I was even tempted to announce a second tournament based on the standings here and have Jay and Paul go at it. But
just for the title match.
Just for the title match, yeah. So
the Rumble in the War Room.
And then third place actually went to Kieran. Kieran Smith.
Kieran Rat Bastard Smith.
Yeah, our Dave's brother. He played Clan Pestilence.
Mr. takes the objectives but doesn't fucking kill anything.
130 rats I think he has in his army, 130 plague monks.
Yep. And
then some priests and the plague furnace.
Vermin Lord.
Yeah, the Vermin Lord. So he had a big horde Skaven army. So that was top 3 was Khorne with Vargroth, is that his name? Vargroth?
Vargroth the Unscarred, or Vargroth the Scarred, one of the two anyway.
And then the guy on top is called something else.
Yeah.
A triple zombie dragon, Flesh Eater Court's army, and horde Skaven Pestilence. No warp lightning.
I'm not sure if Paul had 3. I have a feeling Paul only had 2 of the dragons, but splitting hairs.
Yeah, I can't really remember. I just know he didn't take a Grand Court because he was talking about but he had 2 Arch Regents as well. The Arch Regent is very powerful.
Yeah.
So, so that was that. So I suppose you can take that to go into kind of have a little chat about Flesh Eater Courts.
Before we do that, and before we move off the tournament, what I'd be interested to know is, Andy, so as we said, you're kind of coming at this from the perspective of someone who's a new player.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, a new player.
New tournament player.
New tournament player, yeah. I suppose the first question I'd ask is having now played in a 3-round tournament, would you be willing to go to another tournament, or would you look forward to going to another tournament based on your experience there?
Yeah, I would absolutely look forward to going to another tournament. It's exactly like playing games for me is hard. It's hard to pick to get a bit of time. I know that sounds weird. If anyone knows like my background, they'll know that that sounds fairly strange.
Mm.
But I know it doesn't look like I work hard, but genuinely it's hard for me to squeeze in games. So it is nice to just be able to take a day and play 3 games.
Yeah.
So I quite enjoyed that. So yeah, I would definitely be looking forward to playing more tournaments and trying to kind of do a little bit better with my goblins. Like I won 1 out of 3 games. So I lost 2 games.
Yeah.
The first one was mega close. There was a point between us, and the points were really high as well. It was like 16 to 17 points.
18.
It was
Nice.
crazy.
Yeah, I remember that game because I remember walking over thinking you had it in the bag. Because
Yeah,
I was like, holy shit, you have wrecked him. You killed his mangler. You were about to kill his bounders as well.
yeah.
And then I came back later on and it was like literally 18-17 to him. And I was like, fuck, that was
Yeah,
close.
it's just big objective swings throughout the game, which was just crazy.
Awesome.
Second game I played Beastman, or Beasts of Chaos. Sorry, I got to stop calling Beastman. And he had an extremely unlucky first turn. I got the mushroom off, and I managed to roll ridiculously high, smash it into the face of his 30 Bestigor, and I think I killed like 14 of them or something. It was awful. And then I got a really far charge on the right hand flank with like manglers and squigs and everything.
Yeah.
1 sec.
Oh, we lost Andy for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another thing. The mushroom actually is incredible. I saw it being planted in the middle of their game, the Gloomspike game.
Mm.
And I didn't realize the mushroom hits your own stuff as well. So
Yeah.
they-
Yeah.
they-
No, it affects the gloom spot as well. Like.
Yeah, so they had 2 mushrooms in the middle of the board, right beside each other,
Yeah.
and neither could really go anywhere.
Yeah.
So like you just had this big zone area denial, and it was just
Just a giant area of nope.
Yeah.
Just nope.
But it does make it. The mushroom is an interesting one because it affects him. He has to stay away from it as well because he's got very squishy units.
100%. 100%.
The grots can't go anywhere near it. The bounders maybe they can kind of risk going through it, but you don't want to lose any bounders. You don't want to take that bad turn where you roll like literally 50% 5 pluses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I really like that mushroom.
Sorry about that.
We were just talking about the mushroom while you were gone.
Yeah, the mushroom is incredible.
Yeah.
It's actually, is incredible the right word? Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Except when you smash into something like a troll army and you're like, oh, it's in range.
Yeah,
of
like
3
4
trolls.
models.
Cause a wound on one of them and it'll give you agenda it next turn. Cool sound.
Yeah, that's then an elite army it's completely pointless against because it only does like 1 or 2 wounds here and there. Whereas against another horde army, which is what we see at the moment a lot, is horde seems to be the kind of current meta.
Yeah.
But
20 of pestilence rats getting hit near it. Oh my god.
yeah, exactly, and especially with Skaven just coming out, we might see more of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I like that. The mushroom's a good one.
Mushroom is a solid choice.
Yeah.
So I suppose just to round out the kind of discussion on the tournament and your experience, is there any advice you'd give to people who might be considering going to a tournament for the first time? Because as we all know,
read your rules pack if you can get a hold of it early, because one thing that I just decided, because like I said, I was trying to keep in mind all the rules that I have all the rules for my brand new army, so I was trying to speed things up, so I decided to ignore, for instance, the realms. So the realms were a big part of this tournament. Every round of the tournament had a different realm set in it, and special rules, and all the spells were inactive, and game 3 I got punished for that. The Slanesh player was casting all these crazy spells, getting all these crazy buffs on all his units, which I thought were part of the Slanesh book. It turned out turn 4, it was like, yeah, these are all the realm spells. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And here's me and my Skagraf being like, yeah, I'm not going to hand a Gorka anything this turn. I haven't got any range for Mystic Shield. I have no spells this turn. There's like 70 spells I could have cast. But,
Yeah. That got you the realm command ability got you in game 1, didn't it?
Yeah.
Where he basically fought first with everything because we were in Hish,
Yeah.
which lets you fight out of sequence.
Yeah.
And
That
if it's
cost
your
me my right flank.
yeah, and if it's your turn, you get to choose what order all that goes in. So even if you decided to react with it, he could say, "Well, I'm going to fight with all my ones first,
Yeah.
kill all yours, and then you've wasted a command point.
Yeah, it was awful. So
it is.
Paying attention to those little things, I think could have been. Yeah, I could have probably swung game one as a win.
Cool.
And obviously you can't judge the rest of the tournament then, because if I would have won game one, then my game two would have been extremely difficult and extremely different.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can't say that I would have won 2 or 3 of my games. No, but it definitely could have changed some of the games and how it worked and how it turned out.
Well, I suppose that's what like the experience is. You learn things you do wrong, things you did right, and then you go back to the next one and you just do better.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing then to some of the people who may be listening to this who haven't done a tournament before, because from my own background, when I first started going to tournaments, it was kind of an intimidating thing to get into, and sometimes tournaments can be perceived as being quite sort of closed off or not really open to new people coming in and giving it a try.
I know even quite like people might perceive a tournament as the hardest kind of win at all cost players, no fun to play against. Whereas, to be honest, I think it's the exact opposite. I think you have some of the best players at tournaments, and some of the best people at the moment, especially at Irish. Like I can speak volumes about the Irish players and just give them props every way, because it is just such a good environment and it's such a great scene at the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
Except for all those Nordy pricks.
Yeah. So so that's
at the end of next month, you won't have any of the problem. They'll be able to get past the border.
So so that was our tournament. That was Hero Phase number 7. So now that was our 7th tournament we ran down in the War Room, and it is I think the 4th tournament where we had 20 plus people.
Yep.
Now the first 4 tournaments I think had 6, 6, 8, and 10 people.
Yep. And then suddenly exploded.
So yeah, it's come a long way. And I suppose we've got all the guys that we like in our community, like all the guys down the south, all the guys up the north, to really thank for that kind of like getting involved in the scene. We go up to the ones up the north when we can. They come down to ours when they're on. It's a really great kind of like community that there's a lot of give and take.
Yep.
Morgan's been great down there, just been providing us with the space, and he doesn't actually open Sundays. He opens specifically for tournaments, so it's pretty incredible to have that.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy as well. So first impressions, he's just really nice.
Yeah, he is.
Even if you think about how the tournament ended, he called into his other job, telling them he was going to be half an hour late, so that we could do the award ceremony and give out prizes and everyone get packed up and
Yeah, no, he's absolutely incredible.
Amazing.
So he's racked, and that's, I suppose I can talk about it here because the pack's almost ready to go. But we have the first, I'll call it loosely, the Irish GT coming up in April, and that's in the 27th and the 28th of April. And we're going to manage to probably comfortably get in extra tables up to a total player count of 32 players. So we're hoping to get that, well, that's already set in motion. Everything's ready to go. We just need to we're going to have the pack out. By the time this is probably up on by the time you're listening to this, the pack will probably already be out.
Yeah. So, if not, it'll be up within a week of this episode being uploaded. The pack will be live and available for everyone to download via our Twitter page and everything else, all the usual spots.
So this is the first. Is not a Hero Phase tournament? Is it a Hero Phase tournament?
Yeah, well, it's run by us, so
it's the first Hero Phase 2-day tournament.
Yeah,
the first Hero Phase 2-day tournament, and it's going to be basically the Irish GT we're going to hold every year.
That's pretty exciting.
So hopefully start off with 32 players this year. If we get the interest, if we get the facilities, if we get the whatever, the terrain, everything, we might try and increase it next year.
Yeah.
It's all depending on feasibility. So let's see what we can do. Let's see how much we can grow this scene. Let's see if we can get people to travel over for it.
It will also be the first tournament in our new ranking season, because our current ranking season finished with the latest Hero Phase tournament.
It did, yes, but the new ranking season actually there's an overlap, and the reason being is because this season started so late. I just let it kind of drag on for an extra month.
Okay, cool.
So because we didn't really have a ranking system, we didn't really have anything set in place. I
Mhm.
didn't decide on using rankings until about, I think, September.
Yeah.
So I went back as far as July because that was kind of when the tournament started picking up. And
Yeah,
then
cool.
I said, we'll go to February because it gives everyone a chance to play in a number of tournaments.
Yep.
And then, so going forward, it's going to be 1st of February to 31st of January. Because it's always, January is a good month to get that one last tournament in. December is usually kind of like a write-off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so they will be the second, unless the Northies run a 2K tournament in the meantime. So
Awesome.
in terms of rankings points, I suppose actually in ranking season, Team Ireland actually we just announced our team today on Twitter. So congrats to the team, to everyone who made the team. I'm not going to list off the names, but yeah, so that's another point. So Six Nations is in Cardiff this year on the 1st and 2nd of June.
Yep.
And yeah, really looking forward to that now. So what else do we want to talk about? We wanted to touch on Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven. I haven't read the Skaven book. I had a look at the Flesh Eater Courts book a bit, and I had a look at the Skaven, a few of the Skaven bits. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your impressions are of the Flesh Eater Courts, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I took the Flesh Eater Courts to my baby. I took the Flesh Eater Courts to the last tournament and had 2 really good games of them and 1 game that wasn't so much of a game. So Shane Ford knows what he did to me with his Carrion Overlords, and we'll say no more on that.
17 drill cannons to the face.
Yeah.
I suppose it's worth saying, I think he built that army specifically for a big target.
Yeah.
Like he built it to beat Legions of the Gash. He built it to the idea with that army is I think he said statistically it can one shot in a gash.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
I can confirm it can statistically one shot 3 Dragon Lords off the battlefield, and it did so. So turn 1, I had 2 Terrorgeists and a Zombie Dragon. Turn 2, I didn't have 2 Terrorgeists and a Zombie Dragon.
So turn 2, you had some free time for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, I got to look at all the lovely plated armies and the really cool tables. So
always got to look at the bright side.
That's it.
What did you use a Grand Court?
I did use a Grand Court. So just briefly touching on the book, I suppose the biggest thing with the book is, for me, the variety that's now been introduced into the army.
Yeah.
So before the army was released, we were relying on a couple of faction abilities in the GHB and the old army book that was released more or less around the time that Age of Sigmar kicked off. It was the first death faction that was released. And for a while it was the only death faction until Legion of Nagash were released.
Yeah.
So the army was in need of an update, and what I like about this is that the core feel and theme of the army is still very much intact, and essentially what they've just done is doubled down on that. So you've got now, broadly speaking, 2 ways of building an army. You can either design your army to be based around one of the 4 big courts, and each of the courts relates to a different unit type. So one court relates to ghouls, allowing you to regrow ghoul units. So if a ghoul unit is killed on a command point of 4 up, you get the unit back. One unit, it makes your Flayer's battle line and adds +2 to the movement of every model on the board, which is what I used. You've got the Gristlegore, which is the current new hotness, which is all about making your 2 monsters battle line and generating extra attacks and allowing your general to attack before everyone else. And then you've also got one that's a court for horrors, and that's essentially makes your horrors run and charge, makes your horrors battle line, and allows them to hit a little bit harder. I think it gives them rerolls to wound.
Yeah. Well, I think the horrors of all needed some sort of buff, because the Flayers got an incredible buff.
Yeah, so the Flayers now, previously their Scream wasn't worth talking about. It was a roll of dice and add 1 and take the difference away from the opponent's bravery. The best you could ever hope to get was a 7, and most things in the game are bravery 7. So, I screamed at you and nothing happened.
And if their bravery was lower than 7, if it was like 5, you're fighting against 60 grots.
Yeah, exactly.
So it didn't really make a difference. It was just garbage. Yeah, and they got a really good buff in that, and also their combat.
Yeah, so now their Flair's attacks are now on a hit roll of a 6, they do a mortal wound in addition to their normal damage. So previously it was just the attack sequence ends, so now they can continue to turn out another bit of damage from that.
Yeah.
And the Scream is now a flat 2d6 versus the person's bravery for each model in the unit.
And that's within
So-
3 inches, or if it's outside of 3 inches, it's -2 to that. So it's not
Exactly, yeah.
it's not as good far away, but it's still better than it was.
Once you've got them into combat and they're churning out the attacks, because they've got 4 attacks apiece.
Yeah, 4 attacks, then you have the arch regent that can give them 7 attacks, and then if you have a character nearby, you can have them fighting twice, so basically 14 attacks each.
Yeah. So I definitely think the new book has given a lot more tools for the army to deal with, to use and to deal with the different types of armies that are out there. So you've got a couple of key utility pieces. I think the Arch Regent is something you're going to see in every single army going forward. For 200 points, he's just pure utility.
Doesn't he summon 200 points?
Yeah, so he has a choice of what he wants to summon. So normally each of the different Ghoul Kings is restricted in terms of what unit they can actually summon on. So the Terror guys can only summon on Horrors or Flayers. The guy on foot can only summon on Ghouls, and so on and so forth. The Arch Regent has a choice of summoning either 3 Horrors, 3 Flayers, Courtier your choice, or 20 Ghouls.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And if you combine that with the new scenery piece that the army gets, the Charnel Throne, if you're within 1 inches of that, you can do it for free. You don't need to spend the command point. So turn 1, you can be guaranteed of summoning on X amount of points.
That's pretty handy. And just to clarify to everyone out there who's been listening to podcasts and stuff like that, it is only once per turn, because a lot
Once
of
per game.
Sorry, once per game. Yeah. She's almost fucked that up again. So there was a lot. I listened to 2 different podcasts about the reviews in the book, and both of them had me believing that it was every turn you could do it, which is wrong.
No, it is once per game you can do this.
So, and
If it was every turn, I wouldn't play them.
it is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then we have a debate about whether you can use the command ability on the Charnel Throne with an Aberrant Ghoul King on Terrorgeist.
Sure, let's have the debate. You can't. End the debate.
Good debate. I liked it.
God, I love debates.
I think
that was a silly thing going around.
Yeah, and look, the FAQ is due to drop this week, so that debate will be nipped fairly hard in the bud. Look, I think at the end of the day, the army has definitely jumped in power level. We've got spell lores, which is fantastic. We've got loads of new command traits.
Gained a power level.
Yeah.
It didn't have a power level before.
Well, look.
Except unless you're Bill Sousa and you're fucking rocking up the USA scene.
Yeah, unless you're Captain America rolling this.
Yeah.
Like, look, it's always been a passion project army for me, so I'm delighted to see it get a bit of extra life. And I've already got different ideas in terms of hobby projects of how I could sort of do the different courts and theming. I found that the army is not. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say you're toying with, when you're saying hobby, you're toying with an idea of doing an army of what they think they look like, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of doing an illusion army.
Okay, so, you've said it live now, which means you have to do it.
I know, but I'm still working out how I'm going to do it, whether I go full Bretonnians or whether I put an Age of Sigmar spin on it, and I'm still kind of toying between the two at the moment.
If you decide to go ahead with that, we will have a chat about Bretonnian parts. I'm fairly sure I've got some.
Cool. Also, you've now said that live on air, so I will be actually probably using that.
Damn it.
Oh no.
One thing I found over the course of the weekend playing the games with them, and granted this could be down to the way I build my army, is that previous to the book, when I had command points available, I was using them to summon on stuff, and that was just a given because there was nothing else I could really use command points on aside from the 3 standard bits you'd get in the standard rule. So you're like, ignore battle shock or reroll your charges or reroll your runs. Now I'm having to actually make a conscious choice between, do I summon something on or do I save a command point to be able to attack twice in the combat phase? Do I need to save one, so if I was using the Blisterkin ability or the Grand Court, I can pick up a key piece and move it somewhere else in the battlefield. Which happened in my game against Chris Archibald and his Deepkin. He had charged a load of eels into my last remaining Terrorgeist, and there was an objective on the far side of the board that he'd moved some models away from. So I spent my last command point to take that model away while it was on 1 wound, pop it on the far side of the board, let it heal up, and claim that objective for a turn, which brought the game back to being within, I think, a 2-point margin. So now I did go on to lose that game, but I think that ability kind of caught him off guard. And again, it's just an extra bit of utility that the army has that it was kind of lacking now.
Yeah.
So
That's
I think
good. That's
it's very
strong
mobile
ability,
now,
that.
I think. Yeah. Whoop. Bit of static there.
Is it gone?
Yeah, we're all good now.
Definitely wasn't playing with the cable.
So yeah. So what's your overall impression that you're impressed with what's been done? Obviously.
Yeah, like everyone can kind of relate to this. If there's an army that you're passionate about and you hear a new book is coming out, you're always going to be excited for what's going to be brought out with that. But there'll always be a little bit of trepidation, thinking, "Oh no, am I going to have to completely change how I play this army? Am I going to like how this army plays?" And essentially, they've taken what the army used to be, and it's just more of that.
That's brilliant. I can relate to the whole, is my army going to be what it used to be? We all remember.
Talk about his Zitch again, isn't he?
we all remember the war. I haven't actually picked them up since. It's very sad.
Yeah.
And we didn't even get a new book. We just got shafted with an FAQ and some new rules. But I'm hoping
you're the tournament organizer. Just pretend just say FAQs aren't used in my tournament.
I will play in my own tournament that I am doing this with.
It's the general's handbook that ruins me.
Oh.
And here's actually just an insight. Well, not an insight. What would you call it? Not a prediction. What I think is gonna come to this year.
That's
I think we're gonna
definition of a prediction.
A prediction? No, it's not a prediction because it's not definitely gonna come true. This is what my
prophecy
opinion is on what's going to happen this year. I think all of the old AOS 1 books are going to get turned into AOS 2 books. And I think the reason why is because GW seem to have hit the nail on the head with a format for their books.
Mm-hmm.
They're now more consistent than they ever were.
Yep.
Because you remember when we got a book out and it would be like, oh, deadly, we got the artifacts and spells. And then a new book came out. Oh, look, we got 3 different types of artifacts and spells. Then a new book came out. Oh, look, we got this terrain piece, and then another fucking book comes out and we have ended spells. So now they finally have kind of like this perfect format of book.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they want to include, and I think everything's gonna be like, right guys, we need to turn every book into this, every format, all the formats need to be similar, so let's get these books out. And I have faith that they're gonna revisit the books that currently don't really get played.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have beautiful ranges, and it is a pity that like the likes of Cardinal Overlords, Fire Slayers, Zinch, whatever else is doesn't really get seen.
Yeah.
Isn't on the board very much, because I would like to see more. I love variety. Variety is one thing I love about it.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a tournament and play 5 different players, 5 different armies, that's the dream. You don't want to play 3 legions and a Gash armies in a row, which is actually what's happening in certain certain scenes at the moment. So I think it'll be a very good move if they did that, and I think they will do it. They already announced that they're going to have new books for every Grand Alliance.
Yeah.
And we know Khorne and Slaanesh are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed Khorne. Slaanesh is heavily hinted at. It's just a matter of what else they'll do after that.
Hot take, putting your money where your mouth is, for the next 4 books after Khorne and Slaanesh. What's the bet?
After
Overlords, Sylvaneth, Fire Slayers, Iron Jaws.
I think Fire Slayers, Seraphon, Iron Jaws, and Zinch would be my bet.
Cool. I'm gonna say Seraphon, Gutbusters, Chaos, Zinch, and what's the last one? Death. Death Rattle.
I could
Another
totally
one for
see
it.
an entire zombie battle tome coming out.
So I purposely didn't say Gut Busters because I didn't want to jinx it or get my hopes up.
No, I did it for you, buddy. Don't worry.
Oh, I should have done that with Cards and Overlords. Now I jinxed it. Fuck.
Yeah. So
That's what
yeah,
I'm working
so-
on for the next 2 months.
I have a feeling there's going to be 10 to 15 battle tomes out in the next kind of 12 to 18 months.
Yep.
And you know, to be honest, I'd be with a lot of them. I'd be happy with just if they just said, "Here's endless spells and a book to update them and bring them in line."
Yep.
Because that would be enough for people to come out of the woodwork or to even start the army and go, "This army's baller," you know.
Well, like, look,
Kind of feels like they're giving you an endless spell, a scenery piece, and a character.
yeah.
'Cause if you look at Korn, for instance, they're getting the endless spells, which we didn't think they'd ever get, and the Skull Taker's getting redone. Do they have a scenery piece?
I don't know yet.
Scenery piece hasn't been unveiled, but we could well see one. Or an existing scenery piece might be co-opted into it. So maybe the Dreadhold becomes the Corn Fortress.
Oh yeah, we don't sell that anymore actually. So yeah, maybe.
So, well, also it's worth noting that Stormcast don't have a scenery piece.
Yeah,
And
it's true.
Now-
Deepkin don't have endless spells.
That's
and-
that's a big shame, that bit there. Like when everyone thinks of Deepkin and endless spells, you get like a 5,000 ideas of what they could be, and like I want a big kraken. That's what
giant
I want.
clam.
A big a clam would be amazing as well.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing to think. It looks like they're going ham this year, and I really hope they do. I really hope they just drown us with books.
Yeah.
Just for variety for anything else. Obviously, I'd love to see my armies all done. I think anyone wants to see their armies done.
Yeah.
But for me, the big one is just having variety in the community.
Yeah. And I think
And,
having variety in the allegiances as well. Because
Yeah, exactly.
Up till now granted, Gloomspite Gitz was a fantastic start, but up till now we haven't really seen that many destruction armies.
Destruction hasn't really had a showing.
Yeah, but I think it's fair. It's not too far to say that Gloomspite Gitz is probably one of the strongest and most varied books we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
So
basically run 3 different armies out of them. Pure trolls, pure spiders, and pure goblins. They all work, and they're all got their own tricks, and they're all powerful. It's really cool.
Yeah.
You can mix them as well and stuff like that. So that, like, I think Goblins and Skaven will offer a lot to, you know, it will be 2 books that go, you don't write the same list for me all the time.
No.
We just have too much. You can, that's what I like as well. I wanted someone to be able to pick up a book and not just go, well, I better take this list because that's the one that works.
Yeah.
You know? So
I'm even having the same problem with Flesh Eaters, and that's got 13 possible units, and that's including the different spells. And I'm going through it thinking, oh, I'd love to take this, but then I can't take this, but then maybe I take that.
Yeah.
So
so well, that's that for that's I suppose I can wrap up that bit there. Anything else to say really about that? I suppose we're just kind of spitballing about what we hope wish list going forward.
Just gonna say it right now. Cards and Overlords will get endless spells. Don't know how they'll work, but they're going to be giant sky mines.
Oh no!
I'm calling it sky mines.
AC 130 gunship straight.
Sky mine. No, think like World War One, like ocean mines. You know, the big balls with all the prongs sticking out.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 of those.
That'd be amazing.
That's what I'm picturing.
So, is there anything else we want to talk about while we're here?
I think that's kind of covered everything. We said we might talk about sort of Golden Demon stuff, but maybe you want to leave that for a future show.
Well, no. Should we let's just jump in quickly. I did want to ask you what your how do you prepare for Golden Demon? What's your kind of approach? And I'm sitting here building the Marty Thralls, and my approach to painting a model is build it, spray it, start lashing paint on it, done. You know what I mean? It's a very is the approach for painting. I know that the skill set required and the time taken is obviously a lot different. You'll spend hundreds of hours on your entries. I'll spend hundreds of seconds on mine. So is there a different method in approaching your Golden Demon? What do you do to prep for your, you don't obviously jump onto a model and go, I'm going to start painting right away. Do you do testers? Do you practice on paper, or what do you do?
Well, that's it. So the stages you've said there, build it, spray it, lash some paint onto it. Like that's kind of the middle bit of working on a Golden Demon entry, for me at least. I suppose like the first stage I always kind of do is I'll look at the categories they have, and I'll kind of identify, right, what am I interested in? Because the first bit of advice I'd give to anyone who's looking at doing a Golden Demon entry is pick something that you're passionate about or excited to paint, because this is something you will be working on for quite a while, and there will come a point where you're like, I can't look at this anymore, I fucking hate it, I don't want to do it anymore. And if you actually at the start enjoy it, and if you can push past that point, then it goes back to being like, nah, I'm really glad I did this, I really enjoy doing this, it's fine, it's all going to work out, it's grand. So to do that, I kind of look at the categories, and like for me at the moment, 40k I'm not overly interested in. Like I'm more kind of passionate about Age of Sigmar, and I know that my strength is usually on sort of more individual pieces. So straight away I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be doing a squad, I'm going to be doing a single model. So taking for example the Age of Sigmar single miniature, because I have that entry planned out, I'll kind of talk through the process I've gone with that. So I decided, right, I'm doing a model for that. The next thing I always kind of do is think, right, aside from the model I want to do, what story do I want to tell with a piece? Because personally speaking, I find that the models that kind of stick in your mind from previous Golden Demons or different painting competitions, or even just models you kind of see on the tabletop when you're playing a game, are ones that you can tell there's some kind of story, whether you straight away recognize that's meant to represent that, or you kind of have to pry a little bit deeper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like you might see something on the base that, signifies what that model did or where that model is.
Exactly. So, yeah, exactly. So for this year, the model I'm going to be doing is a Crypt Ghoul Courtier. So
surprise.
Yes. Also, paint what you know. That's another thing.
Yeah, there you go.
So obviously the whole idea about the Flesh Eater Courts and their background is that they think that they're knights and kings out on crusades and stuff. So essentially they see themselves as the Bretonnians from the old world of Warhammer Fantasy.
Right,
but
yeah.
they are now just these slavering cannibals and monsters. So what I want to try and do with this entry is try and mirror and hint at some of the delusion that they see themselves in on the actual model, so you kind of can see both sides to it. So the image I had in my head for that would be, right, I've got this model that has a skeleton strapped into the back of the hairs on its back. So using that skeleton and some bits from the Skeleton Warriors kit, I'm going to do that skeleton up to look like it's a sort of a jousting knight that's essentially been stuck on the back of this ghoul, kind of like what you might see in, like, I don't know, a play when you have a guy playing the horse and he's kind of going around as like the front half of the horse, and then somebody's going around as the back half, and there's a puppet set on the back of this thing. So it's kind of a more macabre kind of version of that. Yeah, exactly. So you'll just have this kind of skeleton that's, kind of flopping along at the back of this ghoul, and then it sort of begs the question, does the ghoul think that he's the horse, or does the ghoul think that he's the knight on the back of himself? And how far has the delusion actually gone? So once I've kind of got to that stage, then I'll start doing sort of building up test pieces of the model. I'll start working out kind of how are you going to display the model as well as another thing. Do you put it on the base that it kind of comes on, or do you put it on an actual display piece? So maybe for something like this, it's more important to have the model interacting with a bit of scenery behind it. So maybe I take a bit of the Charnel Throne, which has some of those kind of fleur-de-lis kind of Bretonnian symbols, and have that in the background. Or use some of the ruined Age of Sigmar scenery and paint a bit of a sort of a fresco of a knight behind him, so that you see sort of what he thinks he looks like versus what he actually looks like, compared and contrasted in front of each other. I suppose, like you were saying, it is a case of doing up tester pieces and not being afraid to experiment with different techniques and different color schemes, and being okay with having to start again if something doesn't quite go right. So when I'll be working on this model, I'll be doing it in sub-assemblies. So if a part of it doesn't go right, I'll be like, okay, I can scrap that. I know I'm not going to use that as the finished piece, but I can start again and I can still test out some ideas on that. so I'm not doing it on the finished one. And then the other thing I'd say as advice, and I say this knowing I'm the worst example of doing this as well, is once you've picked your categories, stick to those categories and enter them regardless of what stage the piece you've started working on gets to. Too often I've tried to, say, enter 6 or 7 different categories, and then on the day I turn up, I'm only entering 1 or 2. And I'll have models that were kind of just 90% of the way there, but never quite got that far. One of the great things about Golden Demon is the fact that you have the heavy metal guys as the judges, and they're there to offer feedback and criticism and helpful tips that you might be able to use in the future. So if you've got a piece that didn't quite get as far as you wanted it to, bring it in, enter it in, get some feedback from the guys, talk to them about where you could go with that entry, and then maybe the following year you have time to actually finish that off and enter it into the next year's competition. So I think there has to be a lot said for actually just finishing projects and being okay with it, and maybe not being the full standard you want it to be. Just try and complete more stuff, finish more stuff, enter more, and just volume of work does help you develop as well.
I'm just waiting for all the people listening to this podcast to turn up with like 50 Stormcast that are just like sprayed gold, entering them in, and then asking the heavy metal team how to paint them.
Yes, because I have that much influence on the community. That's gonna happen.
Because like we've all been privy to some of the Twitter debates on rules, so you can imagine the way people interpret what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
now the Twitter debate on Golden Demon entries. That's what I've started.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to happen now. We need an FAQ on Golden Demon entries.
Yeah. So that's kind of my rambly talk about how I'm going to.
So what you're saying? So to put it into like steps. Step 1, research. So find out what categories there are, what category kind of stands out to you.
Yeah.
Keep in mind what rules are in that category. Some of them can be quite particular on size of base you're allowed to enter, so you're kind of restricted on what you can do with that space. There's no point in working for 6 months on a model and being like, oh, wait a minute, this breaks 3 of the rules for entering this category. I can't do it. Crap.
Yeah, so do thorough research then, basically, and keep in mind what you enjoy to paint, what type of models you want to paint. Once you've done that, try and mock up models. And I think when you said there, about tune models and sub-assemblies, and so that if you fuck up a piece, that you can replace it easily. So to me, especially if you're starting off, if you're fairly fresh to Golden Demon, if you're only just getting started in kind of that very kind of talented painting style, what that would say to me is to start off with simple models with easily replaceable parts, rather than going for these mad conversions to try and impress people with your conversion skill. Try and just get the painting down first. So if you want to do, for example, a crypt horror model, you have a box of crypt horrors, you have spare arms, it's not hard to replace a part. Paint that model to the best of your ability. If an arm fucks up, you have a spare arm to put on that model.
Yeah. I would say is, if what you're passionate about is doing a cool conversion, then just go straight for that. Don't worry too much about fucking it up. Just, again, do that conversion, complete it, see what happens. And you'll learn a lot just from doing that, just being like, okay, this worked this year, this didn't work. But again, it's all about just practice.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm definitely on that side of thing. I always do something that will like stand out, something that, so for me, being a standout model is slightly more important than being the best painted model.
Yeah.
Because a judge will pick up and look at something more thoroughly if it stands out to them, if it's a bit more exciting, or it's a bit more like, oh, what the heck is that? How did he do that? Or what's that? Oh, look, he did that and that and that now. It's really cool.
Another 2 pieces of advice I'd give, and these are slightly contradictory. One is show what you're working on to people and ask for their advice and ask for their feedback, because everyone will have a different thing that they'll pick up on. And
don't post it online though.
Don't post it online. But if you've got a crowd of friends that you kind of know and you work with and you like do hobby with, See if they're getting what you're trying to communicate with the model, or if they might have a suggestion being like, well, actually, I think if you did this, it'd be a bit clearer, and that can sometimes be just exactly what you need just to push that model over the line.
Yeah.
The other piece of advice I'd give, which again I've fallen into this trap before, and it is slightly contradictory to what I said last, is work in a bubble. And what I mean by that is if you're working on a model for a particular category, so let's say Age of Sigmar single miniature, and you spend your time on something like Instagram, just flicking through feeds, and you see a particularly well-known person or a painter in the community is working on a model for that same category, and you instantly get demoralized thinking, oh, well, that person's entering. There's no point in me entering into that category. I won't bother with that model anymore. So it's a trick that it's something I've done to myself before, and it can be quite easily done when you start comparing your stuff to somebody else's that is entering. Remember that a photo never fully communicates what a model is. It can sometimes look much nicer or much worse than it actually is in reality. And just because something is, you think, oh, that's really cool, the judges might have a completely different opinion and might think that actually what you're doing is really cool, and what the guy on Instagram is doing is actually really derivative, or they've seen it 1,000 times before.
So don't doubt yourself.
Just to take that bit as a slight bit of fact is that I am Dave's partner in crime when it comes to going to Golden Demon. Now I myself do not enter because I'm a tard with a brush, but and every time we go, he enters all his miniatures. They get put on the bottom shelf because that's how it works, and then you kind of come back a few hours later. If they're one shelf up, you're basically you're a finalist. You've done well enough that the judges are now considering you for trophies and such. And every time we go, Dave gets his models into the cabinet, looks at all the other people's models and goes, oh shit, that one's really good. Oh shit, that one's really good. Oh shit, that one's really good. Oh shit. And he's like, he gets really demoralized. And then we come back 2 hours later and he's a finalist in 3 of the categories. And you're like, shut the fuck up, Dave, you prick. So no, that's the whole idea, where he's sick of looking at his model. So he's like, oh, I don't know if it's good enough. But to the judges, it's a fresh eyes. And he's suddenly like, oh, that's amazing what he did there and how he did that and everything. So
yeah, it's that sort of mentality where you look at someone else's model and you assume the grass is always greener.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yes.
Yeah. So you have to have faith in yourself. Don't kind of like doubt yourself just because you see something different.
Yeah. And kind of bringing it back to the discussions we were having earlier on about the tournament. Don't drop the head. Yeah. Keep at it. Persevere. Absolutely. Everybody has something that is completely unique to them and their perspective on the hobby that you can offer. So, like, I firmly believe that there is no quote unquote standard you need to achieve to be able to enter Golden Demon. Everybody has their own stamp or style or way of expressing models that they can do within reason. Okay, granted, if someone's only learning how to paint, maybe give it a few years before you look at entering Golden Demon. But generally speaking, everyone can absolutely take a crack at it, and you'll definitely get some. You'll definitely get something from the event or any other painting competition that's being run.
Advice for anyone who's thinking about doing that, like you said, people who are new to it, but like painting is clearly their passion in the hobby, but they haven't been doing it for very long, is pick an obscure category. Do a Blood Bowl team. Like a Blood Bowl team generally only has maybe 15, 20 entries, as opposed to 40k single model, which will have 2,000 entries.
Yeah.
So, and you can do funky things like with a bit of stadium work or, funny cheerleaders or something that stands out, which, like I said, it's not all about how well everything is painted. Yeah. It's more about setting the scene and stuff like that. Like Dave said, did you say this on camera or off camera that you're painting up some Dreadfleet ships?
I said this off camera. I'm painting up some Dreadfleet ships.
So
now I've said it on camera. Technically, yeah. I'm not on camera because the camera is off. I hope the camera's off.
Wait, off. You're not recording yourself? Why am I wearing clothes then? But that whole idea of like how many people will enter a Dreadfleet ship this year?
Yeah, so
there might be 15, 20 entries. If you can get your hands on a Dreadfleet ship, paint that up. Yeah.
And did you not hear about his speech about being in a bubble?
No. What are you talking about?
The secret out.
Talking about one of those like hyperallergenic bubbles where if he gets a bit of dust on him, he dies.
Secret's out, Dave. You better scrap the Dreadfleet project.
Yeah, that's it. Done.
No, I'll fix it. Or maybe it wasn't Dreadfleet.
Nailed it. Perfect.
No, everyone always does Space Hulk. Oh my god.
Well, Okay, well
Um,
that's kind of a cool insight into kind of like how the kind of like the work that goes into Gold Doom. One last question on it.
Go for it.
How long would you spend on like a Space Marine sized model? Not necessarily a Space Marine, it could be any sort of like man sized model. How many hours do you think goes into something that you would do? Not necessarily
like an
everyone.
infantry sized dude.
Yeah,
Uh,
infantry sized model. Don't
I
want to say Space
really fucking hate that question. For for the simple
Like
reason that
how long is a piece of string?
the answer is as long as it takes. Like I can give you examples of like when I won a Golden Demon
Yeah,
2-3 years ago now at this
2 years
stage.
ago.
2 years ago. And that entry I did it over the course of, I want to say on and off, it was about 3-4 months, but that was maybe half an hour each night, and there'd be some days when I just wouldn't touch it because I just need a break away from it and I just need some space. So it is just a case of don't try and time the work, give it the time you think it needs, and just, if in doubt, just throw some paint on the model.
Just get going, just get started, and
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, okay. So it doesn't matter how
Um,
long it takes. It just just because some people are faster painters than others, obviously as well.
Exactly.
mhm.
Some people will be able to paint something the night before and win a demon. Some people it'll take months to do somewhere, and there's half a dozen options in between. So, best advice I can give is just go for it. Just try it. See how you get on. Just paint something. At the end of the day, you're painting a toy soldier. It shouldn't be that hard. Like you can get enjoyment even just from the process of doing it.
And
Just giving
also,
it.
if you think about it like that, like you're just painting a cultic soldier. Imagine if, like, let's say, Mick, you decided, I want to enter Golden Demon, as completely unfeasible as that is, and you will never actually do it. But imagine if you decided, my Volturnos is going to be my model. So all you're doing is painting up your Volturnos to a higher standard than you normally would have,
Yeah.
entering them into a Golden Demon for a bit of crack, having the chat with some of the guys that are there. Probably not going to place or do anything, but at least you've had the whole experience. And when then you come back, you have the centerpiece of your army painted to a higher standard, ready to rock and roll for cool games and stuff. So
Yeah, that's not a bad result at all. Like, I'm not a very creative person in that sense, but it is something I actually in my head have said, will I just do something kind of a bit more? Will I spend a bit more time on something and see what I can kind of get out of it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I always end up being tournament painting, and
3 colors
it's a
minimum,
shame.
baby.
I really do wish you would just go back and spend another 10 hours on those 6 beautiful Dracolines you started.
Yeah.
yeah,
Just get them sharp as shit, because they looked like you did like 2 days work, and I was like, these look great. Why did I tell
yeah,
them to do the orange ones? Now I want the orange ones.
yeah. And that's
Um,
the thing. Like, I actually I've got the best of intentions to go back and like I've got my Stormcast to a certain level.
Yeah.
I've done the kind of the cloaks. I've done all the armor trim. Done all the weapons. I've done basically the base coats and washes for everything. And all I need to go back is layers and edge highlights. And I've done one unit of adjudicators to almost finished, and they look great for me. I'm really
Mhm.
happy with them.
yeah.
And I just have this feeling like my army is tabletop ready, and I feel like that's all it's ever going to be. But I do have the best of intentions to go back and actually finish the army, because it's actually an enjoyable paint scheme. It looks cool when it's done, and it's a very striking color scheme.
Yeah.
But I have that intention with any army I do kind of 3 color minimum on.
Mm.
I've been trying with my ogres now to actually finish them properly,
They're looking
rather
well as well.
rather than just slapping on the colors.
Yep.
So that's my aim for them. As I said, right now I'm building all my deepkins so that I have it ready for Six Nations if I take them.
Cool.
But I do want to finish my ogres as kind of like a labor of love rather than anything else.
Yeah.
Um,
The last bit of advice I'd actually give, just this is the small one, is if something like Golden Demon is intimidating, which granted it absolutely can be, or like Crystal Brush or anything like that, enter a local painting competition. Like a lot of the GW stores will have kind of a semi-regular painting competition, or things like Armies on Parade Day. That involves an element of both converting, painting, and making something that, as Andy was saying, stands out.
Yeah.
So look around, see what in your local community you have as an opportunity to sort of test your skills. We've said it before on the podcast that having a tournament or having a deadline is a great motivator to get stuff done. Having a painting competition is the exact same thing, but for just a smaller scale of model. So rather than an army, you're trying to get a squad or a model done for it.
Yeah. Exactly.
My one add-on to that tiny piece of information, and like it's all brilliant what he said, but don't be discouraged also if you don't have a local games workshop to go and do this in. Like there's a million other ways to run a painting competition, whether it's just if you have a group of 8 friends who all do Warhammer together, organize one between yourselves. If you're a guy that doesn't engage the hobby with other people, so you do it at home in your thing, it's only this thing you do for yourself, painting is your only thing, jump onto one of the millions of Facebook groups that there is online and say, hey guys, I would love to get a painting competition going where we all paint up a model, post it up here, and then get people's vote on how to do it. There's a million ways to do it. You don't always have to worry about it being done for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's some good insight. It's good, especially for people like me who probably wouldn't ever think that painting is something
just stop there.
Into.
People like me who just don't think.
Yeah, but if like there's a lot of people in my shoes who just think, I'm not a painter, I'll never be able to enter a painting competition. And maybe like some people might want to. They might think, I'd love to be able to do that. But like what you're saying is anyone can. You just have to start somewhere. You know what I mean? It's like anything, hard work will get you most of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good a good point to kind of stick out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that was a nice 2-hour chat we had there about Warhammer. So I think we can just leave it there.
Cool.
Hopefully we'll have these out more regularly than we did last year. So I want to thank Dave and Andy for their chats on the show.
No problem.
Anytime.
And we should hopefully maybe see you in a week or two. Maybe we can get a bit more kind of frequent and give a day where we have a podcast out once we're all kind of settled.
So realistically, we'll talk to you again in April.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.